Welcome to Waters Iron Works. We are continuing our work through the ABANA National Curriculum. We are looking at section 1.3, which is all about hammers, how to swing them, and hammer blows. Because I really love blacksmithing and I love talking about blacksmithing, and my wife doesn't like hearing about blacksmithing, you guys are going to get a little bit extra, and we're going to talk about some hammer-like items as well in this video, so that if you're ever out there looking to buy something, you can tell, is this something as a blacksmith I should be interested in? Yes or no? But let's start first with a question that we will answer in the next video. I have a pretty unique hammer here. If you want to take a look at this, Gregor, if you can zoom in on it. And what you'll notice is unique about it, it's got a hole in it, right there. If you might know what this hammer is, feel free to drop a comment in the comments. Like I said, I will reveal the identity of this mystery hammer in the next video, but spend some time taking a look at it. Stuff like this, I found it at an old tool sale. Wasn't sure what it was, but I like hammers, so I had to pick it up. And it is kind of a unique purpose hammer. Let's kind of talk about the different parts of a hammer, and then we'll go into different styles and things like that. This is a hammer that I actually forged with Lyle Wynn and Stan Bryant a few years back when they were doing a hammer making event. And it's nice because it does kind of separate out the different parts of a hammer pretty well. So obviously we've got the handle of the hammer where you're going to hold on to it. Coming up from that, we've got the cheeks of the hammer, which is this part. It is sometimes spread out, it is sometimes not, that the handle passes up and through. We then have the throat or the neck. This is, on some hammers, like ball peen hammers, a lot of times very obvious. German style cross peen hammers, you don't really see a neck. We're then going to have the face. This has two faces. It's a rounding hammer. Looking up at the top of it, we have another important item, which is the wedge. So hammers, the way the handle stays on the hammer is that you design it so you can just barely fit the handle through. You then have a cut in the top of that handle. You drive a wooden wedge typically in if you're doing kind of the classic style. And then you come in with a metal wedge potentially, or another wedge, and go the opposite way. And driving that wedge in is going to spread out the top of the handle, preventing it from being able to slide back through the hammer. So if your wedges start coming out, your handle is going to start being loose pretty soon. And you'll see all kinds of wedging systems. A lot of modern hammers are going to have glue and stuff like that in there, which can help with it. You might see ring wedges and stuff. Some of these may have that on it. If they do, we'll take a look at them. This is, now that we kind of know the different parts of the hammer, and we'll talk more as we go through them, this style is called a rounding hammer. It is really designed so that you can hammer with different parts of the face and push the metal. So this can kind of work as your cross peen or your straight peen or even a diagonal peen as you're doing work, and really let you push and move the material in different directions. It is an extremely popular style of hammer, and for good reason. They are excellent hammers. Let's continue our way through. This is the hammer that I actually probably use the most. You can see the handle's in pretty rough shape. It will probably need to be rehandled here at some point soon. I got this from Centaur Forge. It is a German pattern style cross peen hammer. So the cross peen refers to this part right here. It could be a straight peen instead, where it's going up and down. It could even be a diagonal peen where it goes diagonal. Very creative naming conventions there. The German pattern refers to kind of this overall look. You can also get hammers like this, right? This is a ball peen hammer. If I had a straight peen on the other side, then this would be something that looks a lot more like a Swedish style hammer, where it's got the big cheeks, necks, and then the face and the peen on the opposite end. I do not have all the different style hammers, so I'm going to put some images up here as we go. There's also things like the French style hammer, where the peen is shifted way down to one side. There's Hoffy style hammers. There's just a lot of different styles, regional variations that are developed. All of these hammers can be excellent hammers. The main thing is finding one that you like, finding one that works with your smithing style. A lot of these hammers do have special styles of striking and ways that you're going to work with them to get the most benefit out of the hammer. I personally like this one mostly because I've just been using it the longest. I'm very comfortable with it and it can do what I need it to do most of the time. It is a 1,000 gram, that's 2.2 pounds. I think it is an excellent starting weight for a hammer. So if you're out there looking for one, these German pattern 1,000 gram hammers, 2.2 pound, a great place to start. But the rounding hammer I had, also a good option. The best thing to do is try and find someone who will let you play around with some hammers and see what you like. Let's continue through our examination of hammers. I looked at this one briefly. All I'm going to mention, ball peen hammer. As we get into the striking, we'll talk about what you use the different types of peen for, but it really takes its name from that section there. Brass hammer. This is an important one that you may not think about when you're going out there and buying the stuff that you need to blacksmith. You never want to strike hard steel to hard steel. That is a huge safety no-no. It is going to damage your tools. It is potentially going to damage you. And so you want a brass hammer so that when you strike, this brass hammer is going to get messed up. This is a consumable item. You will eventually throw it away. It's not going to send off high-speed fragments, and it's not going to damage your other tools. It is what is going to get deformed. So, good hammer to have around, definitely needed. We've got a variety of other hammers here. I've never used these a whole lot, although I've had them for a number of years. These are different types of dishing and armoring hammers and things like that, right? They're going to be designed for specific applications. General blacksmithing, you're not going to need these hammers, but if you do get into some specialty applications, you'll want these. A lot of the same terminology applies to them. And you can see these ones do have the ring style wedges rather than the more vertical style. Little tiny 300 gram German pattern crosspeen hammer. It's nice having hammers in different sizes, right? Here's a 3-pound crosspeen hammer. It lets you match the hammer to the work. You can do a lot with kind of a 2 or 3 pound general purpose hammer, but being able to go up and down is useful. This is not actually a hammer. It is one of the wide variety of blacksmithing handled tools. What we've got here is a punch. So you would put this down, you've got somebody coming in with a sledgehammer, striking the back end, and it lets you punch right through. You'll notice that this is not on its handle very well, right? It is very loosely attached. And you see that with a lot of these struck tools. And this is not a safety concern. It's kind of the way that they're designed to work. The idea with these is you're not going to be swinging them around, right? So you don't have that risk of the head flying off at high speeds and injuring someone. What does happen is you've got it on there, you have somebody sledging, and they come in and they accidentally hit your handle. And now your handle is broken and you need to rehandle it. When you rehandle it, you might say to yourself, why am I going to go through all the trouble of really making sure this thing's going to stay on if I'm not swinging it around? So have a handle that you can just kind of wedge in there, force it in, and call it good enough on a lot of these struck tools. Another punch here, also, right, pretty loose head. This one may have had a wedge at some point, or it may have been repurposed. Here is a set hammer, I believe, another struck tool. This would be used if you want to make some very precise set downs and things like that. Right, you could put this down and then strike the back of it, and it's going to give you a set down, right? You're making basically a shoulder or something like that with this style hammer, coming in, cleaning up lines, that kind of thing. I've never used this one. As you can see, very mushroom, in some dire need of repair. I promised you guys a video on how to clean up mushroom heads. We may use this to show you how to do that. Also not a hammer. This is a handled hot cut. So if you're cutting material, especially thicker material, or you want to be more precise, you may not want to come up with a hardy tool in order to do that cutting. You can put this here, have a striker hit the back of it, cut through things nice and easy. I'll use this a lot of times if I've got to cut through something like a jackhammer bit, because I'm going to be making tools out of it and I want to section that up. A lot easier to do this than try and do it with something that's smaller. Hammer, just a slightly different style, another cross peen hammer. This one I think is pretty old. It's a good looking hammer. I should use it more than I do. Here we've got another punch. This one vertical or horizontal instead of the diagonal. And this just lets you angle things differently as you're working with it. We've got a number of these guys here, which are pretty fun. This is one half of a solution to a problem. So if I've got square bar and I want to make it round, I can use this in conjunction with a swage block. So you can set that on a swage, put the piece of steel in that you're taking down to whatever size you're looking at, hammer on the back of it, and get something nice and round. A good way to reduce the size of your material there. And obviously, right, you need kind of one of these that matches up with each of the different sizes in your swage block. So you'll see a lot of old blacksmiths with a wide variety of these tools. Another special planishing hammer. This is one I picked up at a sale somewhere. Just a fun little hammer. I'm not sure exactly what I'd call that. Maybe a cross peen hammer of a slightly different design. If anybody knows, drop a comment. Tell me what you think it is. Here's another strut tool. You can definitely see this is really when these heads start getting dangerous. Any of these things could fly off very easily, so it needs to get cleaned up before it's used. But this is going to be a fullering tool. So set it on the material, hammer on the back end, and you can make a dent of this size through that material. So super useful. Can also be combined with things like a fuller on the bottom of the same size in order to evenly neck something in. And that'll take us up to our sledgehammers. I've got a whole video on how to strike with the sledge. I will link to that up in the corner here somewhere so you can take a look at it if you want to know how to use a sledgehammer. These are the old school power hammers, right? Before, or even today, if you don't have a power hammer, you can get a couple friends, 3 or 4 guys with sledgehammers, or gals with sledgehammers around a piece, can make short work of even some pretty heavy duty material. And they come in a lot of the same sort of things that you've seen, right? We have our cross peen, we've got our straight peens, we've got more of the sort of mallet style sledgehammer here, and we've got this funny little guy. Looks kind of like a sledgehammer. This one is on a nice long handle, relatively large hammer head on it, except that it's not a hammer. This is a flatter and is designed to come in and flatten out any marks that you may have in steel. Nice wide face on it in order to distribute that weight and take out those marks as you finish up a piece of material. That takes us through the nomenclature of hammers. The next thing that we need to do is get the forge up and running. We're going to talk about how to swing these hammers, and we're going to talk about a couple different types of standard blows. Once we look at that, we'll be done with section 1.3, and we'll get into, I believe, some actual forging in section 1.4. We've got one part before we get into the actual lighting the forge and swinging the hammer and stuff, and that is when you buy a new hammer, is it ready to go off the shelf? And the answer is no. Any hammer that you get is going to take some love and care before you're ready to go and forge with it. I actually ran down to Harbor Freight earlier today and picked up their 3-pound cross peen hammer here. And there's a couple things that we need to look at. I'm going to set this down. If you want to come in close on this, Gregory, hopefully it's easy to see on the face here. There's a ridge running around the face of this hammer. Every hammer you buy, even if you get it from a blacksmith supply store, is going to have kind of this factory finish on it. This needs to come off or it is going to leave marks in your hammer. A lot of times these faces are also extremely flat. A little bit of a dome to the face of your hammer is going to let you hammer more accurately, and it's going to prevent your hammer from kind of flying off to the sides. So if you feel like when you're working and you're hammering, your hammer has a tendency to want to jump off to the sides, try cleaning up the face on it a little bit, little tiny bit of a dome on there, and you may find that it strikes a lot truer. The other thing that we need to take a look at is the peen on this hammer. These, again, very sharp corners on here, maybe a little narrower than I'd like. We're gonna need to take this back to the grinder and take off all these sharp edges. Let's do that, and then we'll get the forge going. I'm just gonna use this grinder. We've got a 36 grit belt on it. It's pretty old though, it's not too rough. Probably not really the ideal setup, but it's what I've got on here and I don't feel like changing it. So I'm gonna come into the slack. We're just gonna start taking those corners off. Rolling it around. Want to try and keep everything nice and even, nothing too sharp here. Trying to hit those edges a little bit more than the middle. That's looking pretty good. Let's do the same thing on the peen now. I'm going to be a little more aggressive on this. Switch down my setup here so I can get at angles a little bit better. Not perfect, but this is looking a lot better. I could do a little more work here probably to dome this out a little bit. But we don't have any sharp edges on this. It's not going to leave marks on the material when we're using the hammer. If you don't have a grinder, then you can do the same thing with a bit of sandpaper. It just takes a little bit longer. Grab some, the higher grit than I've got here with the 36 belt. Try and take out all those lines and stuff, make it nice and smooth. The other thing that you might consider doing if it's a new hammer is taking all of the varnish off of it. I at least find that tends to lead to more blisters. So a hammer without varnish and then put some boiled linseed oil or something like that on the handle is going to give you a much better feeling grip. So strip that off. Again, sandpaper will do the trick to get all that varnish off, and then just some boiled linseed oil on there. We've got the fire going. Before we actually heat anything up though, let's talk about the principles of how to stand at the anvil and how to swing a hammer safely and correctly to get the most work done. Let's also talk about the value of the speed of your strike versus the weight of the hammer. We'll actually start with that. So this is a 1,000-gram hammer, 2.2 pounds. If you think about the equation for energy, it's equal to 1/2 times the mass times velocity squared. And so what that tells me is if I took this and I bumped up to a 4.4 pound hammer, 1,000 to 2,000 grams, and I swung that and we went the same speed, every hammer blow is going to be dealing or doing twice the work with a hammer that's twice as heavy. However, because we're squaring the velocity in that equation, if I swing this hammer twice as fast, same weight hammer, I'm gonna get 4 times the work instead of twice the work. So a bigger hammer is not always the answer to your problems, right? Good accuracy, being able to swing your hammer fast, even with a lighter hammer, can achieve a lot of work as well. It is a lot of smiths' personal preference on where they want to find that balance between speed, accuracy, and velocity in order to get the most work done and to be able to get work done over a long period of time. I tend to favor slightly lighter hammers. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, and so being able to work for a long time with a lighter hammer lets me get more work done than if I tire myself out with a bigger hammer. If you are a bigger guy though, a 3, a 4, I even hear about people occasionally using like 5-pound hammers, are all options that are out there. As we come up to the anvil to start swinging, what we want to do is position ourselves nice and close to the anvil. And it's going to vary a little bit depending on what work you're doing. A pretty good stance if you're working here in the middle of the face of the anvil. I like to come in with a foot on either side, my hammer parallel, so that I can come straight up and down on that material. If I'm working over here on the horn, again, really what I'm looking for is to get close to the anvil. You will see some folks who are way back here. This is going to be unsteady. It's going to reduce the amount of power that you have in your blows. It is also going to reduce your accuracy. So you want to get up close to the anvil, stand up pretty straight. You don't want to lean down over your hammer. There is a safety issue here. If you miss and that hammer rebounds up into your face, it's an eye-opening experience. Near the anvil, pretty upright, being able to come in and access things easily. When we're holding the hammer, we're really using just 2 fingers to hold it. We've got our thumb wrapping around and then our index finger. You can use the pinky because we are concerned about velocity as you're coming down to kind of kick the hammer right at the end to get a little bit of extra velocity. But all the support for the hammer and that looseness and everything is coming from a nice loose wrist and then by holding it with just these 2 fingers. You don't want to put your thumb behind the hammer. That will both deaden the rebounds that we're looking for. It will also potentially cause some tendon issues and things like that if you do it over time for a long period of time. Wrap around, those 2 fingers doing all the work. We want to let that hammer come up pretty high, right? I tend to like to bring it right outside my peripheral vision and then let gravity do the work, a little bit of effort, pulling that down and then right back up. That's going to look something like, right? Nice high hammer blows. And really the important thing about these hammer blows is that they take a lot less effort. Most of your work is just going into lifting that hammer up. There's not a lot going into the swing down. And because you're getting that speed, you're getting that gravity assist, you're going to get a lot of work done. I see frequently with new blacksmiths where they are hammering like this. You put a lot of effort both into stopping the hammer as it's coming up, and then you've got like 3 inches, so you really have to push down in order to try and get as much speed as you can over that little distance. You hit softer, you don't do as much work, you tire yourself out. It can feel a little intimidating to bring the hammer that high up, but you will get a lot more work done. If you find that you're suffering from a lack of accuracy, you can move your hand further up the handle. This is going to give you more accuracy. If your accuracy is good and you need a little bit more power, you can slip down closer to the end of the hammer. This gives you a bigger arc. It lets you, with the same size hammer, increase the velocity of that swing. And as we just saw, that is the biggest factor in getting more work out of each blow. So by giving yourself a longer lever, you can do a lot more work. We've got our steel hot, so we're going to grab it out of the fire here in a second. The 4 different blows that we're going to be taking a look at are a full face blow, a half face blow, a shearing blow, and a fullering blow. Let's take a look at probably the most common of those first, which is the full face blow. That is going to be done here primarily in the center of your anvil, sometimes on the edges, but this is sort of the standard blacksmithing blow here, used for drawing material out. So again, get nice and close, bring that hammer up high, and we're going to be able to do a fair bit of work drawing out material. There you go. What you're looking for with this blow, a couple tips, right, is if I am doing drawing out or something like that, I'm normally going to keep my hammer in the same spot and I will move the material under it That's a little easier than chasing that material all over the place. You want to make sure that these are nice and straight. Let's get a nice little flat area here. Right, if you are working and you see something like this, if you can get in close, where you've got a lot of little lines coming in, again, a pretty common thing for beginner blacksmiths. That's because your hammer is not coming down exactly straight. If you're off a little to one side, you're going to get those ridges. So, right up on the anvil, hammer coming down, nice and flat, and that's your full face blow. Blow number 2 is going to be the half face blow. This blow is used when you want to do set downs, offsets, things like that, right? If I was going to make a tenon, for example, I might use this blow. The idea is that you want a shoulder in your material where it changes dimensions over a very short distance. And it works off the basic idea that anywhere your hammer is going down into the anvil, right? If you imagine my hand as the anvil, anything that the hammer is going straight into the anvil, that's going to forge. It's going to draw that material out. Anywhere that the material is unsupported, like on the back half of the hammer here, it doesn't forge that material. It doesn't change its dimensions. All it does is move the material. So this lets us forge in one area while protecting the other parts of our steel. Come to the near side of the anvil and we will hammer half on, half off. A couple blows, good blows in the beginning to set that shoulder can really help. You do want to make sure that you don't bounce around a lot with this. But that's what we're looking for. If you want to come in, hopefully that's visible, right? We forged out this section. We've left this the same, and we've got a nice shoulder there. That is the advantage of the half face blows. You can do the same thing over the far side. Right? And we're going to make that shoulder now on the other side, and we're going to forge out the stuff that was on the anvil. Very useful. J-hooks are a good place where you'll use this a lot. Like I said, tenons, there's a lot of times when you're going to want this sort of half face effect. Blow number 3 is a fullering blow. This is primarily used when you need to neck in material. It's going to be normally done on the far side of the anvil. What you want to do is put your steel at a bit of an angle over the edge. You line your hammer up with the edge of the anvil, come to the far side of the anvil, hold the steel at about a 30-45 degree angle, line our hammer up with the edge of the anvil. I find it nice to flip this every once in a while. And that's the goal there, right? With the fullering blow, this is not the best it could be done. But the idea is that you're fullering in from both sides simultaneously, necking that down, making a two-sided transition, and then you can take this and do whatever you need to do at the end of it. Spread it out, make a spoon, something along those lines. Fullering blow right there, like that. For the shearing blow, let's take a look at the shearing capabilities. I'm going to put it over the far edge of the anvil. I'm going to hammer right next to the edge of the steel, or next to the edge of the anvil. And you'll probably have to bend this around a couple times. But what it will do is shear off that piece of material. Let's take a look at the shearing blow one more time. This time we're going to use it to put a bend in something a little bit further away from the anvil so that we don't get that shearing action. So say we want to put a jog in this, we can come here to the far side of the anvil again. We're going to hit a little bit further away and we're going to bend it down. And then we're going to need to come and kind of straighten things back out and then bend it down again. Straighten it back out again, bend it down, straighten it back out. And with this shearing blow right along the edge of the anvil right there, it is a way to put this sort of jog into material, right? I'm going to make a crank or something like that. I might look at this shearing blow. I might also just bend it like normal and then bend it again and get pretty much the same effect. But those are the two different ways that you can use the shearing blow. And with what I think is going to be a very long video covering hammers, their allies, all the different types of blows, how to dress a hammer, that should give you everything that you need and that I need to show that I know in order to move on to the next step, which is I think we're on 1.4 next, and we're going to be covering several different types of tapers. So I'll see you again soon. We will get to work on that power hammer again some point soon, so keep an eye out for some videos on that. Thanks so much.